Welcome back, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome back to Parables and Punches. This week, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to be actually interviewing our sister Ahyxza over here. We're going to allow her just to talk a little bit about her life and the things that God has done in her life.
Amen.
So I just want to start with tell us a little bit about yourself, about your life, your childhood, where you grew up.
Well, my childhood was a very interesting childhood. I can't complain because we were raised well, um, spoiled. Thank God that when we asked, they gave. You know, again, when we asked, they gave. You understand? But what we were lacking, they didn't give.
Right.
You understand? So, unfortunately, a lot of Latin families are like that. Especially these Latin families that are from the country. You understand? That they don't know how to say "I love you." They don't know how to come and give you a hug. Everything was con grito y cantazo.
Yeah.
But when we asked, they gave it because that's the way that was their sorry.
Right.
You understand?
Yeah.
But yeah, we were raised good. Very, a very interesting childhood. A lot of partying, a lot of family gatherings. But in the course of me being raised up, a lot of things happen. A lot of abuse.
Okay.
Is sexual abuse, a lot of verbal abuse. So when I started growing up and understanding that what was happening was wrong,
right.
I started rebelling against everyone. At 13 years old, I decided to leave my house. Okay. I left. I did not come back to my house until I was like a couple of months later, because we left. We had to leave Florida because I was being hunted down. Okay. So we left to Pennsylvania. And somehow I got in contact with my father. My father got in contact with me. I don't remember how it worked, but I came back down and got together with my parents, and we spoke about it, whatever, but the damage was done. And after that, months later, I got pregnant with Ahyxza. Life went on, but the life that I was living, I was still a child.
Right.
I was.
Was there a difference in your relationship there with your parents once you came back?
There was, there was. My mom wouldn't talk to me. She wouldn't talk to me for months. My dad was, he spoke to me, whatever, but he always had that like little grudge, against me. He didn't want, my husband in that time to come around or anything. So it was just, there was always a fight. Right. It was never peaceful at any time. Then after I gave birth to Ahyxza, I don't know how, I don't even remember how I came back living with my parents again.
Okay.
And
this is you and Ahyxza?
It's me, right? It's me and Ahyxza only. I came back living with my parents, but I was still with her father.
Right.
But he was living with his mom. But in the course of all this, is that even though that my parents were strict, very strict, even though that I had a child, and that I already had, supposedly my family built on the side, they always wanted to be controlled. They always wanted to control me. Okay. You understand? Okay. The time that I leave, when I come back, they were so obsesionado, with Ahyxza. Okay. So it's like they didn't want me to take her anywhere. Right. It's like everything that they went or what they did, they always had her with them. So I got used to that. Okay. You understand?
So they had more responsibility.
They had all the responsibility for Ahyxza. Okay. And then years went on, and then I got pregnant with my son. Mm-hmm. But in that transcourse of me getting pregnant with my son, my husband in that time, he got sick. He was diagnosed with aplastic anemia. He needed a bone marrow transplant. So I was going through, I'm a teenager, right. And I'm going through with a sick husband, right. That the doctors weren't giving him survival at nothing. He needed his bone transplant, 911. Right. There was no compatible with none of the families. Right. So they had him on the list, okay. So then he was going through all this blood transfusions weekly, all the medications that he was taking. Mm. So he was, I say that he was just so much medications that he was taking, it was getting to him, so it's like we were bouncing from Florida to Pennsylvania, Florida to Philly, Florida, you understand? Okay. We were never stable, okay. And then I had Pito, I had him over there in Philly. Pito was born in Philadelphia. And then we came back down again, so when we came back down again, he got really sick, ended up in the hospital, and we thought that's it. He was going to go ahead and die. He didn't. He got recovered.
Did you have Ahyxza too, or was Ahyxza with your parents?
With my parents. Okay. Yeah, with my parents. Then through all this, okay, he got better, whatever. Next year, his bone marrow started producing cells. Wow. So he was getting better. And that transcourse, he decided again to move to Philly. So we packed up all our stuff, and Ahyxza was with me this time. Okay. With Ahyxza and Pito. Uh-huh. We packed everything up and we went to Philly. We were living in Philly, and we were there for months, mm-hmm. And one night, I remember, we were at the house, and he tells me, I'm going to go to the corner store. I'm going to, buy a 6-pack of Coronas. He was never a drinker. He was like 1 beer, 2 beers, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, fine. So he went to the store, got the beers, came back. He was playing Jerry Rivera. In that time, Jerry Rivera was like the bomb in that time. You understand? That was it. Jerry Rivera, So he was playing Jerry Rivera, and one of his friends came over. His friends like, listen, llévame para downtown, I gotta do something. Yeah. And they both left. And next thing you know, hours later, I received a phone call that he was at the hospital. Wow. And I'm like, okay. And they said, there's somebody here. We don't know his name, but all we have is your number. I don't even know how they got my phone number. Wow. And we have him listed as John Doe. Wow. So I went to the hospital, and didn't tell his father, because his father used to live right behind us. Okay. So I didn't tell his father anything until I got there to find out exactly what was going on. So when I got to the hospital, I mentioned, I got a phone call, whatever. All I remember is a security guard coming with me into this elevator, and he's like, everything's gonna be okay, whatever. And I'm like, why is he talking to me like that, Uh-huh. So I go into this waiting room, and I hear the phone ring. There's like a little phone. Okay. I heard the phone ring, and I pick it up, and they're like, we have a John Doe here, whatever. And I'm like, okay. He's like, he's giving me descriptions of him, and I'm like, yeah, no, that's in Jose Green, And he's like, well, I'm sorry to tell you, he's dead, And I'm like, what, So it's going to sound cruel what I'm going to say, but it is the truth. I'm very young. I have these 2 kids. And when the doctor tells me that over the phone, wow. I was just like shocked at that moment. Then I called the father. I called my mom and dad. I called everybody, whatever. And I remember me being in this truck with one of his cousin. And I'm sitting in the truck and thinking, and I just felt that burden off my shoulders. You know, it's like, okay, he's gone. You know, I don't have to go through what I was going through. You know what I'm saying? I am free of, you know, constantly taking him to the hospital, constantly leaving my kids because, you know, I'm there for him because he's admitted, because I'm constantly doing everything. You understand? And I was tired. I was a teenager. I'm tired. You know? Absolutely. So it's like, you know, at that moment, yes, I was being selfish. At that moment, I was being cruel. You can say cruel because it's like I was like, shit, he gone. You know, saying I'm free, whatever. You know, but then we were trying to find out what happened. You know, how did he die? What happened? Whatever. And we found out later on there was a drive-by shooting. Wow. He was in the corner. You know, and these guys came by and started shooting, and the bullet hit him. You know, wow. And I had to go pick up the truck because in that time we had this Bronco, and the Bronco was parked somewhere else. Anyways, a long story short, he passed away. I ended up going back to Florida. Right. Now, when I ended up coming back to Florida, you understand, I you know, didn't know how to handle it. You understand? I don't know what to do. I don't know anything. We did the funeral. We did everything. I stayed at my mom's house, whatever. But I didn't mourn, you know? Right. So I just decided, you know, now that I'm free, I can do whatever I want to do. You know, I did not live my teenage years how the teenager is supposed to do. I'm going to live it now. Wow. And you're like, you know, what age are you now? 20 something. Like, I was young. I was 22, 23 or something like that. Okay. You know? So, I started going out, you know, partying, you know? And through that partying and going out, I was introduced to cocaine. You know, at first, no, you know, no, okay, you know, lo mío cerveza, beber, whatever. Yeah. But, you know, constantly coming around, and people in your surroundings are constantly doing it. Yeah. You understand? Yeah, one hit's not gonna do anything. Yeah. You understand? I ain't gonna get hooked with one hit. Right. And that is such a lie of the devil. You understand? Because you can get hooked just by one hit. Yeah. You know, and that's exactly what happened. You know, I did the line, and then I did 2, and then I threw 3, and then I'm doing an 8-ball. You understand? Yeah. So it's like, you know, it starts. That's where everything started. Right. You know, one thing I want everyone to understand. You understand? Because there's a lot of people that have a custom to say that, oh no, es porque es por sus padres, porque es como lo criaron, porque my parents had nothing to do with it. Because my parents, like I said, I had a good childhood. Right. You understand? Right. As them raising us up and them providing for us. You understand? Exactly. They were good. You understand? I never saw anything like that from my dad, especially my mom. My mom, you know how mommy is. You understand? So this is a choice that I made. Right. I knew what was the right and wrong. You understand? But I chose the wrong. Yeah. You understand? So this is a choice that I made. I made the wrong choice. Right. You understand? So by us doing the wrong choices, there's always consequences for what we do in life. That's right. You know. So I started with the drugs, the cocaine. Okay, I never liked it pot, but I used to smoke weed to come down on the cocaine. Right. You know, but I got so hooked up on it. It was like an everyday thing. I couldn't sleep. I wouldn't sleep. There's days without me sleeping. Next thing you know, my dad found out. You know, okay. And all I remember that day was that my dad looked at me, and he's like, "¿Tú te crees que yo soy beep?" Okay, and I'm just looking at him, and he's like, you know, ya yo he pasado por eso. Wow. You know, mira lo que tú vas a hacer. And I was like, I was high, and la nota hizo, se me fue la nota, you know. But still, even though that he said that, I continued. Right, it didn't affect me. It did not affect me because in that time, it was controlling me. Yeah. In that time, I thought that I was like, I was on top of the world. You know what I'm saying? I can do all things, right. You know what I'm saying? No matter what, I mean, it's like I used to drink, you wouldn't get drunk because you're so high on cocaine that it won't let you get drunk. Right. You understand? So it's just so much going on in this world that I created,
right.
that I didn't want to stop, next thing you know, I was dealing with, all these men coming in and out, and out of my life, in and out of my life, next thing you know, my kids weren't with me anymore.
Right. And they're with your parents.
And they were with my parents. Okay. Exactly. I left the kids with my parents. And I was still in the streets. Right. Hustling in the streets,
to supply your needs.
To supply my needs, right. Going to these bars. I used to go to these bars and sit down with these guys and get them so drunk so I can rob them and get their money and do what I gotta do.
Yeah.
And that's what I did that for so many years, and then I end up pregnant without me knowing it with Kiana. And I remember that I found that I was pregnant. I was 4 months pregnant, and I was still doing drugs. Right. I still was doing my thing.
Yeah.
And I decided to do an abortion.
Wow.
I went to the abortion clinic, and they did a sonogram, and they told me, well, you're so far along, we can't do a normal abortion on you. We're gonna have to dilate you and do this and da. So all I remember, I was like, oh yeah, right. And all I remember me looking to the side, and the sonogram is right there.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm looking to the side, even though I don't know what the heck I'm looking at.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Yes.
You understand? And I can see ese puntito, ¿tú me entiendes?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it, and I just came off the bed, and I'm like, I can't do this.
Wow.
And I walked out, and she's like, wait a minute, but you already paid you. I'm like, stay with the money.
Wow.
I can't do this. And I jumped in the car and I left, and I went home. I still was, hustling in the streets.
Yeah.
And I stopped around 6 months pregnant with her, 6 or 7 months pregnant. In that time, I went back home again. My dad had the house next door to him. He was renting it out. He, told the people they had to, leave out of there. He moved me in there with the kids, but still, I still didn't want it to stop. It's like I still wanted to, do what I got to do.
Or you couldn't?
I wanted,
okay.
And yo me daba mi capaita, lo que sea, right. But it's just the streets calls you, man. When you are so deep, in this sin, and it's like the street calls you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even though that, you try so hard, it's just, it's calling you. It calls you, and now I know, tú me entiendes, now that we're Christian, whatever, now I know that's the enemy.
Of course.
You know what I mean? I mean, he uses anything and everything, to bring you down to his level.
Bondage.
You understand? So it's like, I was constantly in that fight, with the streets and, staying home with the kids. Yeah. I remember my kids telling me constantly, when are you going to stop? When are you going to stop? I had both of them in a private school, a Christian private school right across the street from my papi's house. There's it's called Grace Christian Academy. Okay. So they used to go there all the time. After I became Christian, that one of my daughter's teacher, Chuki's mom, what was her name again? Donora. Okay. They're pastor at a church. And she got in contact with me a couple of years ago. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so really happy that, that you're a Christian now, whatever. She's like, can you come to my house? That's when I was dancing in ministry. And she's like, can you come and minister at her church? And I'm like, yeah, of course. So when I went to this women conference that she had, I went and ministered, and she presented me, right? So when she comes and presents me, she's like, I am a living witness of what God does, because her daughter, mine, Ahyxza, used to cry to her and ask her, please pray for my mom, for my mom to come back home. and I never knew that until that day, and that just like broke me. If we would understood that whatever we do in life, we think that our kids don't know, but they do know.
Of course they do.
It doesn't matter how old they are.
Yeah.
They know. And that stays with them until forever. Exactly, forever. So because someone's out there praying for me, I am where I am today.
Yes.
Yeah. But through all this, I had Kiana. Kiana was really tiny. I remember I had her. I brought her home. She was the tiniest thing, 5 pounds.
Wow.
Really tiny, and that was caused because of the stuff that I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But even though through all that, you understand, I still left them with my parents, and I went back to the streets again.
You did?
I did.
And how old was Kiana?
Kiana, when I actually left to the streets, Kiana was, I say, 6 months, 7 months, something like that. So I left all 3 of them, went back, to the streets, doing my thing. It's crazy. It's just crazy how, you said it, we get bonded, with all the stuff that, that it wants to take control of us.
And it does.
And it does, exactly, and it does. And it's from there, everything just went downhill. I started getting arrested. I went to jail, many a times. It's just, it was terrible.
You were in your low.
I was in my low. Yes, in my lowest.
Okay.
So
then, how do you go from your lowest of low? Like, where's the moment where you find Christ? When did that happen?
Well, prior to me finding Christ, there was a moment that I left. I stopped doing drugs, cold turkey, but I kept on drinking and kept on partying, whatever, but with no drugs. I stopped that. And then I took my kids back with me.
Okay.
I was living in Miami Lakes in that time, and the kids were living with me. And then I still was partying, doing things, whatever. But so many men coming in and out of my life. You understand? But I had a bad relationship that caused for me to be alone for a couple of years. It's like, and you understand?
Yeah.
And it was just me and Ahyxza then, because she was my driver, and I can drink all I can drink, and she's my driver.
And she is how old?
She was like 16, 17 years old. Okay. 17. She was 17 years old. Okay. So everywhere I used to go, she was with me, because I can get her into these clubs, because these are these Spanish clubs that they don't ID you, or they're like these restaurants, lounge. You understand that she can go in.
Yeah.
So she was always my driver, and we used to go partying together.
And where are your other kids?
Mommy and papi.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was just me and kids, whatever, that period of time. And next thing you know, I end up meeting my husband now, and at a party, that he was there, I was there, we talked, whatever. That's another story there. But when he came into my life, it was like, he had to work a lot, because I didn't trust. You understand?
And he's not Christian.
He's not Christian. No, he's not Christian.
Okay.
even though it seemed like he was back then, but yeah, he wasn't, you know. He had to work a lot because I had so much hurt.
Right.
You know, I did not trust no man. I did not didn't just I just didn't want no one to come in.
Right.
You understand?
You were guarded.
Exactly. You know, so he came into our life. You know, I know my son gave him a really hard time.
Yeah.
You know, because you know he even said he's like, I'm the only man in this house. You understand? Yeah.
No.
And he used to come and visit, and Vito was always sitting in between us.
How old was Vito?
Vito was like, I don't know, like 12,
so cute.
13, something like that.
Yeah.
You know, but little by little, you understand, the kids started getting comfortable with him, and you know, I started, you know, letting my guards down a little bit here, a little bit there. Yeah. You know, we hooked up, you know, lived together,
right?
You know, in house, and then that's where everything started. You know, again, the partying with my daughter, and then she met Jimmy, her husband now. Right. So it was like us four always, you know, partying, drinking. Meanwhile, my husband was like, you gave him a cup, and that was his cup for the whole entire night. Right. You understand? So he wasn't about that life.
Right.
You know, he was never about that life. And then we met somebody from church one time. Some mans came to our house. But the way I know that God was already working with me was because I remember I used to drink every day, an 18-pack every day of beer.
Wow.
Okay, every day. Okay, I used to get out from work, go to Johnny, the little corner store. They already knew. I was driving up in my Expedition, and they used to come out with the 18 right there. Okay, and I remember one time that I was drinking, and the beer used to foam up in my mouth, and I'm like, oh, I think I'm getting sick. You're saying whatever, you know. So I stopped drinking. I went to bed or whatever. Then I think the next day, some guy from some church came to visit my husband, and I don't even know how in the heck I think he was selling something. I think he was trying to sell something. He came. He started talking to my husband. I'm there with my beer, okay, at the table, you know. And again, I took un trago, and it started foaming up in my mouth again, you know. And I'm like, and he's talking about God, mira que la iglesia come, and I'm a leader from de los caballeros or something, and and I'm like, I'm going to my room. So I dumped the beer out, and I went to my room again. And then days later, that's when I met my cousin, your mom, that was at my poppy's house, and she invited us to go to church. And I was always like, no, okay, whatever. But that day, I said, I gotta go. I have to go.
Wow.
And I went, and that was the day that we gave our life to the Lord. You know,
beautiful.
So it's like, God was already working with us.
Yeah.
You understand? Another thing is that he told me afterwards was that, and I think I said it prior, is that we were having problems. You understand? Right. And he was already getting ready to leave. Like leave the house and whatever. And if it wasn't because of that, you understand, we wouldn't have been together. Yeah. You understand?
God is amazing.
He is amazing. He is amazing. You understand? I mean, he just transforms. You understand? People in an amazing way. No matter our past, no matter what we went through, no matter the situation. You understand? He's always there. Yes, he's willing. The thing is, are we wanting? Do we want to be transformed? Do we want to change? Do we want? You understand? To stop going through that pain, and sometimes it's because we are so accustomed, exactly. Yes. We're comfortable with the situation, or comfortable that, we don't know anything better. Right. You understand, than what we're going through. And sometimes it's also the fear.
Yeah.
You know, of, you know, what if, you understand, and what that, and what we don't like new things in our life.
And sometimes we feel like we don't deserve new things.
We're not worthy.
Especially with what we've lived.
Exactly. We are not worthy. And that's one of the things that I had a battle with, is like, you know, how could you forgive me if I can't not forgive myself?
Yeah.
You understand? How can you forgive me of all my dirt?
Yeah.
You understand? If I cannot forgive myself. You know, I used to cry almost every night because of the memories. And I asked God, I'm like, take these memories out of my mind. I don't want to know about my past. I don't want to remember about my past. I just don't want nothing, no part of my past. You know, it's just, it was so much that I did, so much dirt, so many people that I hurt.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't care who was in front of me. I didn't care who I hurt. You know, my heart was so filled of hate.
Yeah.
You know, I had this black heart that, you know, I never shed a tear, and it's like, now I'm like, Lord, can you please let me cry no more? You understand? So it's like, you know, I just didn't understand, you know, I'm not worthy of this. I'm not worthy of this, you know. And someone told us one time, and that we're talking about pastoring, and I'm like, you know, no, I don't know about that. I don't know about that, you know. And that person asked me, what is it? And I'm like, I'm not worthy. I am not worthy of that. You know, I'm so short. You know, it's like, there's no way, you know. And I don't even remember what he said, you know, but we are worthy.
Yeah.
You know, we are worthy, you know.
So valuable that he sent his son to die on the cross.
Amen. Amen. Exactly. You know, I am worthy. You know, I know who I am in the Lord. And I know that, you know, I had to go through what I went through because I know there's someone out there that has or is going through the same situation. And I just want to let you know that you can get out of there. You know, God is willing to help. You know, there's people out here that is willing to help, you know. And if you don't know anyone or you don't have no resources, just comment, you know. Leave your phone number or just whatever you need to do. You understand? Reach out to us. We'll go ahead and help you. We'll find the resources. You know, this is why we're doing this, because we want you guys to know that, you know, you can do it.
Yes.
You can do it. You understand? Don't allow anyone or nothing to come tell you anything negative or anything opposite of what, you know, you want to do. You understand? You can do it. You understand?
And you're not alone.
And you're not alone. You're not alone.
And it's never too late.
No, it's not.
It's never too late.
No, it's not. Look at me. How old am I? You know, let me tell you, when it comes to the Lord, you understand, there's no age limit.
That's right.
You understand? It's like, you know, nobody can say, no, okay, yo estoy vieja, I can't work for the Lord, no, I can't do this. Yes, you can. There's no age limit for the Lord. Right. You understand? That's so, right. You know, I just really hope that, you know, with our testimonies, you know, we can reach out, you know, anyone, you know, that they understand that, you know, there's people out there willing and wanting to help you, you know.
And if you know someone that needs to hear this story, share it, right? You know someone that's going through a situation right now. Maybe it's not you, but you know someone and they're going through a difficult time. Our God, He saves, Amen. He restores, Amen. He redeems.
Yes.
He makes the impossible possible. There's nothing that He can't do.
That's right.
And so we know that He loves everyone. He loves this person that you're thinking about. He loves you, right? If you're the one going through this, and He doesn't want us to stay in those situations because He made a way, right? The cross made a way for us to have freedom from all of the bondage, from freedom from guilt, from shame, right? He made it so that we could be restored into what He created us to be.
Amen.
And he can do that with you, and he can do that with your loved ones and the ones that you know. So share the video, get in touch with us. We're really here for more than just speaking, for more than just this podcast. We're here for you. The reason that we do this is not because we want to hear our voice. We do this because we want to hear your voice.
Yes.
And we want to hear you, and we want to see what God can do in your life.
Amen. Amen.
So please, I think it's a good moment to kind of pause, and we'll talk again more next week. But really just, I want to take this moment, and I'm going to have Pastor Raul pray. And I want him to pray for the hearts to be touched, to be softened.
Amen.
Right? So everyone that's been listening to this, I want you to really open up your heart and allow God to work in you, right? To take those thoughts.
Yes.
The enemy, he comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. And he tries to get into our mind, and he even sometimes makes it feel like we're saying it to ourselves, right? We hear it like in our own voice, but it's not you, right? And so I'm just praying that you would have control, that God would take control of your thoughts.
Amen.
And that he would soften your hearts, and that you would receive this prayer that he's going to make today, and that you would get in touch with us.
Amen. Amen.
Pastor Earl.
Señor, te damos gracias por esta noche, Dios,
Yes,
Señor. Gracias
Jesus.
por ese testimonio, Dios, Señor, tan grande y poderoso, Dios, Señor, Padre, que hemos podido escuchar, oh Dios, Señor, Padre. Yo te pido, Dios, Señor, en el nombre poderoso de Jesús, que tú toques la vida, que tú toques los corazones, que tú toques, Señor, a aquellas personas que se encuentran en esa misma condición, oh Dios, Señor, en la cual, oh Dios, Señor, se encontraba ella, oh Dios, Señor, de ese grandioso testimonio, pero tu misericordia, oh Dios, Señor, la alcanzó. Que de la misma forma, oh Dios, Señor, Padre, que tu misericordia pudo alcanzarla a ella, oh Dios, Señor, que así alcance miles y millones de personas que se encuentran atravesando por la misma situación, oh Dios, Señor, que ellos puedan entender, oh Dios, Señor, que hay una oportunidad, que hay un Dios que le ama, que ellos no están solos, Dios, Señor, que tú en este momento estés extendiendo tus manos de misericordia, tus manos de amor, oh Dios, Señor, Padre, para sacarlo en la condición que ellos se encuentran, oh Dios, Señor, que para ti, oh Dios, Señor, no hay nada imposible, que simplemente, oh Dios, Señor, tú estás tocando la puerta, oh Dios, Señor, Padre, para que ellos puedan abrir, oh Dios, Señor, y entrar y cenar contigo, Dios, Señor, Padre.
Amen.
Y tú, oh Dios, Señor, Padre, le dará, oh Dios, Señor, paz, le dará seguridad, oh Dios, Señor, Padre amado, ya que ellos se encuentran en su momento, Dios, Señor, Padre, pensando que la paz y la seguridad, oh Dios, Señor, está ahí afuera, pero la paz y la seguridad y el amor solo proviene a través de tu Hijo amado Jesucristo. Te damos gracias, oh Dios, Señor, Padre, que este testimonio llegue, oh Dios, Señor, Padre, a todas las naciones, oh Dios, Señor, Padre, donde tenga que llegar, oh Dios, Señor, para libertar a aquellos que se encuentran presos, oh Dios, Señor, en aquellas oscuridades. Te damos gracias en esta noche y continúa, oh Dios, Señor, bendiciendo. Dios mío, Señor, Padre, este podcast, oh Dios, Señor, Padre, que sea tú, oh Dios, Señor, Padre amado, abriendo puertas y cerrando las puertas que tiene que cerrar. En el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Santo Espíritu de Dios. Amén.
Amen.